Fantasy football junkies, you are tuned in to the #1 source for fantasy prognostication. It's Testosterone Fantasy Sports with your hosts, Jeff and Jesse. So listen up. Here's your chance to gain the edge over the competition and dominate your fantasy football league. Every week we break down all of the matchups and tell you who to play as well as who should ride the pine. This is the joint that every fantasy junkie needs, so check it out!
Oh yeah, fantasy football junkies, Testosterone Fantasy Sports. Back in your grill this week, Jeff and Jesse, a week 3 of the preseason edition for your viewing pleasure. Jeff, 3 weeks of the preseason down. This is our final preseason show.
Yeah, really, it's been very interesting preseason in the NFL, and we've been here each week so far, bringing you all the information that you need to know to keep on track with your fantasy football preparations. So lots been going on in the NFL, Jesse, and when week 3 in the preseason happens, that's when you really get a chance to see what's going on for each individual team. They play their starters the longest possible that they can throughout the course of the preseason.
Correct.
Now that we're into the 4th week of the preseason, you're going to see a lot of guys who are fighting for jobs, guys who won't be there or on practice squads when the season actually opens. So it's a time to kind of take a little bit of a break, exhale a little bit.
Right.
We're fully steeped in fantasy draft season, so I'm sure by the time this show airs, a lot of the guys are going to be done. But if you're getting to the point where you've got yours coming up this next week, you're going to want to pay close attention to this show because we're going to put the final touches on your draft preparations here this week.
Yeah, and you fantasy junkies out there that have tuned into this show for the first 4 years, you know our format. We record the show on Thursday night, and the show airs every single Saturday night on MCN Channel 6 from 9:30 to 10:30. That format stays the same throughout the preseason. So as we sit here on set tonight, there's like 12 games that are about to go off tonight on Thursday night, including our very favorite Minnesota Vikings. So everything that we're going to be talking about in this show is basically perceived from the first 3 weeks of training camp, or for the first 3 weeks of the preseason. So we won't be able to speak to anything that's happened in the preseason games, which air tonight, which is Thursday, or on Friday. The show airs on Saturday.
But it really doesn't matter because these games, like we said before, are going to be all of the scrubs who are just getting a chance to have the limelight one last time before they get cut and go get real guy jobs.
Right.
Guys who are just going to be able to be backups on the team. So rest easy, everybody. There haven't been any crazy injuries, but it has happened, and the bug has bitten several good players. And we're going to get into that actually, right about now.
Yeah, right about now we want to talk to the fantasy minds out there and just get you to lend your ear to what we're doing here. The proliferation of information is well underway. And Jeff, that information that fantasy junkies need out there, injury is a huge part of that. Let's talk a little bit about a big injury hitting the NFL in the past week. It's been announced that Chad Johnson, enigmatic Bengals wide receiver, has a partially torn labrum in his shoulder. Now, Johnson is saying he will play through the pain, but this is the type of injury that sidelines NFL players regularly. What do you think this means for Ocho Cinco?
Well, it makes me really concerned about his ability to be an impact for his team on a play in and play out basis. I get the sense that his reps are going to be restricted here throughout the course of the season. He's saying that there's not a whole lot of pain or anything, but he sure did come down hard on that elbow, and it just seems to me like a torn labrum. It might restrict his ability to go up after the ball that's thrown high. Lucky for him, he's got a quarterback who's going to put it right on the money at about 90% of the time. But at the same time, they also have Chris Henry on this team, and with TJ Houshmandzadeh, they can really afford to put Johnson in that slot and work him as a 3 if they need to.
Right, if need be, but there's no doubt about it. I mean, Johnson's fantasy value takes a significant hit with this injury. I hold Chad Johnson in 1 of my 5 leagues, so I was a little bit down about the news, but essentially I'm putting the over-under on games played here at 5 because I worry that as enigmatic biatch wide receivers go, Johnson might realize a month or so into the season that this injury is too painful. He takes a couple hard shots on the shoulder, as receivers do from time to time. I'm just worried that at some point in time this season, Chad Johnson will be out for the season, and that could negatively affect your fantasy lineup.
Oh, most definitely. If he gets off to a hot start and you've got him in your lineup, you're going to want to think about trading him when trading resumes around week 4.
Right.
So keep an eye on that situation because, as Jesse's saying, probably not going to make much of an impact for the Bengals this year.
Staying in the AFC, talking about a prolific passer, Peyton Manning, a guy who has not practiced very much throughout the preseason, has missed all 3 of the team's first preseason games. He's still being taken as that number 2 or number 3 quarterback overall in your fantasy league. Jeffy returned to practice this week, but his knee is still giving him problems. He had a bursa sac removed. Are you leery at all of Peyton Manning right now?
Well, maybe just a little bit. I do really like their schedule for them. They're used to playing in a dome, and they open their first 3 games inside, and I just think that really bodes well for them. Their schedule is pretty cush throughout, so I do think that Peyton Manning, being one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, is going to be able to step up and perform under center. The big question is who he's going to be receiving the snap from.
Yeah, Jeff is talking about another Jeff. Jeff Saturday, the starting center for this club, the Colts. This is a guy who Peyton Manning has been receiving the snap from for years. Jeff Saturday is almost like the quarterback of that offensive line. He does all the line calls, points out where the blitz is coming from, and that's a very complex offense as Manning loves to come to the line, go under center, and call audible after audible after audible. Jeff Saturday going to be out for 6 to 10 weeks with a knee injury, a major hit for the Colts, man.
Yeah, it could be really tough, and part of the reason is because the guy who replaces Jeff Saturday is a rookie, and without that experience in a very complex offense against some extremely complex defensive fronts and blitzes, they could have a hard time with their chemistry and their timing right away as the season starts. So something to be mindful of as you go into your draft, whether or not you might want to back off of Manning. It could really affect their ability to hold that defensive blitz up the middle, and he could find guys in his grill, for the first part of the season.
And let's not forget that when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, they had an All-Pro at left tackle, Tarek Glenn, who retired a year ago. So this is 2 Pro Bowl players that are now not on the field in the front 5 for this team that were in that Super Bowl lineup 2 years ago. So Colts fans, there is a little bit of cause for concern in Indy. But not as much concern as there would be in San Diego, where Sean Merriman, all-pro hybrid linebacker who blitzes all the time. You know him from his lights-out dance that he does on the field. The guy is a freak. Jeff, is he freakish enough to play through 2 torn knee ligaments?
Well,
what's he doing?
He's talking about it, and I think it's just the biggest mistake that this young man could make. I mean, he's been in the league only 4 years, and he's been a high-impact kind of a guy. So I just think that this is something that definitely puts his career in jeopardy if he does play on this knee. To me, it's a big mistake, and I think you got to look at the longevity of your potential in the league. He had that run-in with the suspension with the steroids a couple of years ago, and we know that steroids damages your ligaments, and it makes me wonder if this is an injury, from that time period of when he was hopped up and stuff. And he was awesome back then. And really hasn't been that level of producer on the field since. He's got a lot of energy, so you love that in a team leadership thing, but you don't want to cripple out there in your defense either.
Right, and Merriman's really throwing the dice here as far as being willing to play with a knee brace on. I've heard medical experts have said, it's 2 torn knee ligaments.
Yeah.
Not an ACL, but a PCL and MCL, I believe. Those 2 ligaments are torn, and that knee's just not going to be stable. I fear, and other experts are echoing these sentiments, that this could be potentially career-threatening if he does anything else to the knee.
Well, at least in this league, guys never hit each other in the knee.
Never.
The opposing offensive lines and running backs are going to target that knee. They're going to put a hat on that knee as soon as they possibly can. And I think that Sean Merriman's in for a world of hurt, both physically and emotionally, as he watches his career potentially go down the drain.
Yeah, bad decision for him if he plays. Moving across to the NFC, another prolific pass rusher, a guy who put his stamp on the Super Bowl last year. Giants defensive end Osi Umenyiora now lost for the season. Jeff, this is a devastating injury to the Giants' chances to defend their championship crown that they won last year when they dominated the Patriots because of that pass rush. Umenyiora out for the season. what are the Giants going to do now?
Well, the Giants have been pretty lucky, you know, in one aspect. It really sucks to lose Michael Strahan after all this happens, you know, to retirement. The team is reportedly talking to him, and it seems like he's not really interested in coming back. But they also have on their team Matthias Kiwanuka, who was drafted as a defensive end.
Right.
So they do have the type of player who they can move from outside linebacker to that end spot, which makes their defensive end still highly potent.
Right.
So, and they are lucky in that way. Now, it leaves them real thin on their depth chart.
Right.
So if they can get Strahan back, it would be definitely a big improvement for them. He's been in the league 16 years. I don't know if he wants to come back. And don't you think he's probably been enjoying not playing?
Well, Strahan kind of strikes me as the type of player who's going to be throwing back some cocktails, maybe eating an extra platter of ribs.
Newly single.
Yeah, every time. I mean, the guy is a bachelor. He's rumored to be over in Europe right now. I'm sure the last thing on his mind is football. He's told the Giants he doesn't want to come back. So to me, the key up front for them now is going to be Justin Tuck.
Yes.
We saw this guy step to the forefront last year during their postseason run. He wasn't starting at those outside in positions, but he will be now, of course. And, you know, between Tuck and Kiwanuka, they should be able to keep some pressure on the quarterback, but still a bad blow for their squad.
Yeah, it really hurts. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. A lot of times Super Bowl winning teams pale in comparison to the prior season, and this could be a harbinger of bad things to come for a team who I wonder if they can even make the playoffs in the NFL's toughest division. We did a poll on our website, testosteronesports.com. You can still vote on it for the toughest division in the NFL, and currently leading the pack by a wide margin is the NFC East.
Very tough
I think
division.
either of the other three teams in that division could go on to win the division and make waves in the playoffs. So
couple other quick updates before we end this first segment. We'd like to thank you for joining us. Testosteronesports.com. This entire show will be posted there, and you'll want to check out the website after the show is over for the Fat Chat. But a couple more injury or development-related pieces we'd like to talk about here. It sounds like in Arizona that Kurt Warner may be surpassing Matt Leinart on the depth chart. Warner will get the start in the final preseason game, so keep that in mind as you enter drafts. Kurt Warner could be the man there. I think that's good for Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald. And the other thing is Rudy Johnson may be out of a job, or maybe moved down significantly down the depth chart, with Chris Perry really making some waves out there in Cincy.
Well, I know this is a league that's all about what can you do for me now, and I'll tell you that Chris Perry's really made an impact for the Bengals here in the preseason. He's got lightning speed, great moves, and he's running with a real fire and hunger that shows a guy who's finally feeling like he's getting his chance in the league. Rudy Johnson has been doing it for a little while, but let's remember that Rudy Johnson wasn't this highly touted player coming into the NFL. Right. He was simply the guy who was backing up Corey Dillon when Corey Dillon turned into a complete biatch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So Rudy Johnson steps in and gets an opportunity, and he was good, but there's a lot of guys in the NFL who could produce on the ground if you give them a good rush up front. You know, and so Chris Perry, he's got talent. He can catch the ball and make guys miss, and a great nose for the end zone. I think Chris Perry's going to be on top of the depth chart very soon in Cincinnati.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we thank you for joining us during this first segment. We welcome you to stick around. As always, we're going to be talking more fantasy football and getting into a whole bunch more on testosterone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be right back after this.
Yep.